The mining pod's warning lights flashed red as Jack Stone tried to steady the small craft. Something was wrong with the navigation system. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter had always been dangerous. But this was different. His instruments were going crazy, showing readings he'd never seen before in his 15 years of space mining. "Base, do you copy?" Jack's voice remained calm despite the situation. The military had trained that panic out of him years ago. Static was his only answer. The pod shuddered, metal groaning against an invisible force. A bright light filled the cabin, forcing Jack to shield his eyes. The sensation that followed was like being turned inside out and stretched across 1,000,000 miles. When the light faded, his pod was floating in an enormous hangar, surrounded by ships that definitely weren't human-made. Two tall, blue-skinned beings approached his pod, wearing what looked like official uniforms. They spoke in a language his ears couldn't quite process, but a small device on their collars flashed, and suddenly he could understand them. Impossible. The coordinates show this craft came from the Sol system. The taller one checked a floating screen of light. They're not supposed to have quantum capability for at least another century. It appears to be a mining vessel, the other one said. Primitive technology. This might have been an accident. Jack kept his hands visible as the pod's hatch opened automatically. The military training kicked in again. Assess the situation. Look for exits. Identify potential weapons. The hangar was massive, easily fitting several Earth skyscrapers. Other creatures of various shapes and sizes moved about, some looking surprisingly human, others completely alien. "Step out slowly," the first blue being commanded. "You are now in the galactic arena. I am Officer Trell, and this is a restricted area." Jack complied, his magnetic boots clinking against the metal floor. "I'm Jack Stone, independent contractor for Earth mining operations." He stood straight, shoulders back, projecting confidence he didn't feel. "Would someone mind telling me what the galactic arena is?" A murmur spread through the growing crowd of onlookers. Some pointed at him, others backed away. Jack heard whispers of human and Earth in various tones of disbelief. Officer Trell guided him to what appeared to be a medical bay. The walls were crystal clear, allowing the curious crowd to watch as various scanners passed over Jack's body. A holographic display showed his internal structure, muscle density, bone composition, and other readings he didn't understand. A small gray-skinned doctor with large eyes studied the results. Fascinating. The muscle fiber density is remarkable for a gravity well species. Bone structure suggests continuous adaptation capability. And look at these stress response readings. Their adrenaline system is like nothing in our database. "What does that mean?" Jack asked, trying to follow the rapid medical assessment. "It means, human," a deep voice rumbled from the doorway, "that you're more interesting than your species' current technological level would suggest." A massive creature entered the room, walking upright, but clearly evolved from something like Earth's wolves. "I am Rex, combat master of the arena's lower rings." Jack noticed how others backed away respectfully from the newcomer. "And what exactly is this arena everyone keeps mentioning?" Rex's mouth curved in what might have been a smile, showing impressive teeth. "The arena is where the galaxy's species prove their worth. Combat tournaments determine trade rights, colonization privileges, and technological exchange rates. We thought humans were centuries away from joining us, but here you are." "I'm not here to fight," Jack said firmly. "This was an accident. I need to get back to Earth. The Council of Eight will decide that." Officer Trell interjected. "For now, you're the first human to reach the arena. Protocol demands you be processed as a potential competitor." Jack's mind raced. Earth needed every advantage it could get in space resources, and here was a chance to help his entire species advance. But the stakes seemed impossibly high. Rex placed a massive paw on Jack's shoulder. "I see the warrior's spirit in you, human. Your species' isolation from galactic society was no accident. Someone thought you weren't ready. Want to prove them wrong." Jack looked around the medical bay. at the alien faces pressed against the crystal walls, at the advanced technology that made Earth's best look like children's toys. He thought about humanity's struggles with limited resources, their desperate push into space, their drive to survive against all odds. Where do I sign up? The training room was bigger than any gym Jack had ever seen on Earth. Holograms flickered around different sections, showing past arena battles. Rex walked beside him, explaining the basics of galactic combat sports. Each species fights differently, Rex said, gesturing to a hologram where a creature made of living metal fought against something that looked like a giant jellyfish. The metal ones rely on pure strength. The float forms use electric shocks. Everyone plays to their natural advantages. Jack watched carefully, noting how each fighter moved. What's humanity's advantage? We're not the strongest, fastest, or toughest species I've seen here. Rex's ear twitched in what Jack was learning to recognize as amusement. That's what you need to figure out. But here's a hint. In my 1,000 years as combat master, I've never seen a species that can take a beating and keep fighting quite like yours. They stopped at a viewing window overlooking a practice ring. 2 aliens were sparring, one covered in scales, the other sporting 4 arms and tough, bark-like skin. The scaled fighter was clearly losing but refused to give up. That's Will. His species comes from a heavy gravity world, Rex explained. Strong, but slow. Watch how he handles losing. Jack observed as Will adapted his strategy, using his opponent's momentum against him. After several more exchanges, Will managed to pin 2 of his opponent's 4 arms, evening the odds. The match ended in a draw. First lesson, Rex said. The arena isn't always about winning. It's about proving your worth. Will's species gained 3 new trade routes last cycle because their fighters showed such resilience. A loud chime echoed through the facility. Fighters began moving toward a large central chamber. Rex gestured for Jack to follow. Time for your first official ranking assessment, Rex said. Don't worry, it's just a scan to measure your capabilities. Every new fighter goes through it. The chamber contained a floating platform surrounded by scanning equipment. Jack stepped onto it, feeling a slight tingle as beams of light passed over his body. Interesting, a technician muttered, studying the readings. Your muscle recovery rate is unprecedented. And these stress response patterns, when humans are injured, they become more effective fighters. Adrenaline, Jack explained. It's how we survived on Earth. When we're hurt or scared, our bodies release chemicals that make us stronger and faster. The technician's eyes widened. Your entire species has built-in combat enhancement. That's concerning. Rex laughed, a deep rumbling sound. It's perfect. The Arena Council has been worried about the competitions becoming too predictable. A species that gets stronger when pushed to their limits. That's exactly what we need. Jack spent the rest of the day learning about arena protocols. The rules were surprisingly simple. No weapons except natural body parts or evolutionary advantages. No killing blows, and fights end with submission or knockout. Winners earned points for their species, which translated into various privileges in galactic society. Tomorrow, you'll start real training, Rex said as they walked toward the living quarters. The good news is, humans are classified as a developing species. You'll start in the lower rings, where the stakes are smaller. And the bad news. Some of the established species aren't happy about Earth joining the arena. They've spent centuries building their positions in the hierarchy. A new species that could threaten that. They might try to make an example of you. Jack stopped walking. Why are you helping me, Rex? What's in it for you? Rex turned, his golden eyes serious. Because I remember when my people were new to the arena. We were seen as simple hunter-gatherers, barely worth noticing. Now we're one of the most respected species in the galaxy. Someone gave us a chance back then. I'm giving humans that same chance. They reached Jack's quarters, a simple but comfortable room with a view of the arena's central spire. Get some rest, Rex said. Tomorrow, we find out what humans are really capable of. Jack watched the artificial sunset through his window, thinking about Earth. His accident might have been the best thing that ever happened to humanity. All he had to do was survive long enough to prove it. The room's computer chimed softly. First match scheduled. Tomorrow, 900 hours. Opponent. Primary classification. Crystalline entity. Secondary classification. Photonic manipulation capable. Arena designation. Lower ring. Division 3. Jack smiled. Time to show the galaxy what humans could do. The lower ring arena looked small compared to the main fighting spaces, but it was still larger than a football field. Jack stood in the preparation chamber, going through his pre-fight routine. His opponent, a being called Light Prism, waited on the other side. "Remember," Rex said, checking Jack's simple fighting gear, "crystalline beings can redirect energy attacks. Good thing you don't have any fancy weapons. Just watch out for the light beams. They can stun or blind you." Jack nodded, bouncing on his toes to stay loose. "Any weak points I should know about?" "They're nearly indestructible when hit straight on. But like any crystal," Rex left the sentence hanging. "They can shatter if hit at the right angle," Jack finished. His mining experience might actually help here. The arena gates opened. Jack walked out to a mixture of curious murmurs and dismissive laughter from the crowd. His opponent emerged from the other side, a humanoid figure that seemed to be made entirely of transparent angular crystal. Light danced through its body, creating rainbow patterns in the air. The arena-eye's voice boomed through the space. "Lower ring, Division 3 match beginning. Earth-Human versus Prism Collective Representative. Standard rules apply. Begin at the tone." A deep note resonated through the arena. Light Prism moved first, sending a dazzling beam of focused light toward Jack's eyes. Jack dropped and rolled, his military training taking over. The crowd gasped. Most new species tried to block or dodge by stepping back. None had gone low. Light Prism adjusted quickly, spreading its arms to create a web of light beams. Jack kept moving, using the arena's support pillars as cover. His opponent was powerful, but like many advanced species, overconfident. "Stand and fight, human." Light Prism's voice chimed like breaking glass. "Show us why your primitive species deserves to be here." Jack studied his opponent's movement pattern. The crystal being had to plant its feet firmly to generate its strongest attacks. That meant he burst from behind a pillar, running straight at Light Prism. The crowd went silent. It looked like suicide. Light Prism gathered energy for a massive blast. At the last second, Jack baseball slid between the crystal being's legs, using his momentum to kick out at its ankle joint. The impact wasn't strong enough to break the crystal, but it disrupted Light Prism's balance. The energy blast went wide, hitting the arena ceiling. Before Light Prism could recover, Jack was up and moving again. He needed to tire his opponent out. Humans weren't the strongest or fastest, but they could outlast almost anything. 10 minutes passed. Light Prism's attacks became less frequent, its movements less fluid. The crystal being had never fought an opponent who just wouldn't stay down. Jack had taken hits. His left arm was numb from blocking a light beam, and his ribs ached. But the pain only sharpened his focus. Getting tired, Jack called out, keeping his voice steady despite his burning lungs. "I can do this all day." Light Prism's next attack was sloppy, fueled by frustration. Jack saw his chance. He charged again, but this time when Light Prism braced for impact, Jack grabbed a handful of arena sand and threw it at the crystal being's face. The crowd booed. It was legal but considered unsophisticated. Light Prism reflexively tried to blast the sand away, temporarily overloading its own light processing ability. In that moment of blindness, Jack struck. He hit the same ankle joint as before, this time with all his remaining strength, and at precisely the angle he'd learned would crack tough minerals. A sharp cracking sound echoed through the arena. Light Prism toppled, its perfect crystalline form spider-webbed with cracks. The arena eye immediately announced, Match concluded. Winner by technical knockout. Earth-Human. The crowd was stunned silent. Then Will, the scaled fighter Jack had watched earlier, started clapping. Others joined in, the applause building as Jack helped his opponent up. How? Light Prism asked, its voice humbled. Your species has no special abilities, no evolutionary advantages. Jack grinned through his exhaustion. That's where you're wrong. We got the greatest advantage of all. We never learned that we couldn't win. In the viewing box above, members of the Council of Eight leaned forward with new interest. The human hadn't just won. He demonstrated intelligence, endurance, and adaptability. Perhaps it was time to reevaluate humanity's place in the galactic order. Rex met Jack at the exit, his wolf-like face showing pride. Good fight, kid, but you might want to rest up quickly. After that performance, everyone's going to want a piece of the human who beat a prism fighter. Jack nodded, already thinking about his next match. Earth was counting on him, even if they didn't know it yet. Jack woke to blinking red lights and a blaring alarm in his quarters. The air tasted wrong. His military instincts kicked in, and he rolled off his bed just as a green gas started seeping through the ventilation system. Someone had tried to kill him in his sleep. The door slid open, and Rex burst in wearing a breathing mask. Move. Now. He tossed a spare mask to Jack. They ran through the corridors as emergency systems kicked in, clearing the toxic gas. Third attempt this week. Rex growled once they reached the safe area. The higher-ranked species are getting nervous. Your last two victories have caught too much attention. Jack nodded, catching his breath. In the past 2 weeks, he'd defeated not just Light Prism, but also a gravity manipulator and a being that could control magnetic fields. Each victory had brought humanity more notice, and more enemies. The Council wants to see you, Rex said, his ears flattening in concern. Now, the Council chamber was a vast room with 8 massive seats arranged in a circle, each occupied by a representative of the galaxy's most powerful species. Jack stood in the center, keeping his posture straight despite his exhaustion. The Metal Lord, a being of living steel, spoke first. Human Jack Stone, your presence in the arena has caused disruption. With respect, Jack replied, choosing his words carefully. I'm just fighting by the rules you established. The rules assumed certain limitations, this from the Energy Weaver, a creature of pure light. Your species lacks natural weapons, yet you've defeated opponents who should be far beyond your capabilities. You call it lacking weapons. I call it adaptation. Jack gestured to the chamber around them. Every species here evolved to be the best at something specific. Humans, we evolved to adapt to anything. That's our strength. Murmurs rippled through the council. The Void Speaker, a dark, shadowy figure, leaned forward. Perhaps it's time for the human to face a true test. Upper ring competition. Rex stepped forward. That's against protocol. He hasn't earned enough ranking points yet. Special circumstances require special measures, the Metal Lord declared. Human Jack Stone, you will face Battle Master Forge in 3 days. Upper ring rules. Jack's heart raced. Forge was a legendary fighter from the Metal Lord species, undefeated in 50 years. Upper ring matches were broadcast across the galaxy. If you refuse, the Energy Weaver added, Earth will be barred from arena participation for 100 years. Jack thought of home, of humanity's struggle to expand beyond their solar system. This was their chance to leap forward centuries of development, if he survived. I accept, he said firmly. Later, in the training room, Rex paced anxiously. This is a death trap. Forge doesn't just beat opponents, he breaks them, and upper ring rules allow for maximum force. Jack was studying recordings of Forge's previous fights. He's strong, nearly invulnerable, and can reshape his metal form at will. But look, he never faces long matches. All his wins come in the first few minutes. Because no one lasts longer than that against him. Exactly, Jack smiled. He's not used to fighting long battles. And what's the one thing humans do better than anyone else? Rex's eyes widened. Endurance. But Jack, you'd have to survive his initial attacks first. Then teach me to survive. Jack stood up, wincing at his still healing injuries. 3 days isn't long, but it's enough to learn something new. They trained nonstop. Rex brought in other fighters who owed him favors. Will the Gravity Worlder, a phase shifter named Drift, even Light Prism returned to help. Each taught Jack something different about fighting seemingly invincible opponents. On the night before the match, Jack couldn't sleep. He stood at his window, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. Word had spread about the human upstart facing the legendary forge. Having doubts, Rex asked, entering quietly. No, Jack turned from the window. Just thinking about what this means. Win or lose, humanity can't be ignored anymore. We're part of the galaxy now. Rex placed a heavy paw on his shoulder. Tomorrow will be brutal. But remember, you've already changed things. No matter what happens in that ring, they'll remember the human who dared to challenge their assumptions. Jack nodded, his determination hardening. Tomorrow would either be a new beginning for humanity or its greatest setback. He intended to make sure it was the former. The lower maintenance corridors of the arena were supposed to be empty at this hour. Jack moved silently through the shadows, following Drift, the phase shifter who had helped train him. Something had spooked his friend badly enough to risk meeting in secret. Look at this, Drift whispered, pulling up a holographic display from a hidden terminal. I found it while phasing through the restricted archives. These are reports about Earth from 300 years ago. Jack's eyes widened as he read. The document showed clear images of Earth cities, detailed analysis of human potential, and most shockingly, recommendations for intervention. They've known about us all along, Jack said, his voice tight with anger. They didn't just find us. They'd been watching Earth for centuries. Drift nodded, his translucent form rippling with anxiety. The Metal Lords and their allies deliberately isolated Earth from galactic society. They used advanced technology to hide their ships, deflect our early space signals, even alter the light reaching our telescopes. But why? Because they saw what humans could become. Another voice joined them. Rex stepped out of the darkness, looking grimmer than Jack had ever seen him. I suspected something like this, but I needed proof. Drift found it. The documents showed more prediction models of human development, threat assessments, and most damning of all, a systematic plan to keep Earth technologically stunted. The Council species aren't just worried about the arena, Rex explained. They're worried about humanity's rate of advancement. Most species take thousands of years to progress from simple tools to spaceflight. Humans did it in a few centuries. Jack thought about Earth's history, how humans had gone from horse-drawn carriages to moon landings in less than 70 years. We adapt fast. Too fast, according to them. Drift pulled up more files. Look at these comparisons. Humans learn, change, and improve faster than any known species. Given access to galactic technology, Earth could become a major power within a generation. That's why they forced you into the upper ring fight, Rex added. They're hoping Forge will make an example of you. Discourage humanity before they have to deal with millions of adaptable, fast-learning humans in the galactic community. Jack's mind raced. His fight with Forge wasn't just about proving himself anymore. It was about humanity's future. We need to expose this. Already working on it, Drift said. During your match, I can phase into the main broadcast system. These files will be transmitted to every species in the galaxy. But I have to survive long enough for that to matter, Jack finished. Rex's ears perked up at a distant sound. Someone's coming. We need to move. They split up quickly, but not before Jack downloaded a copy of the files to his personal device. As he made his way back to his quarters, he noticed more guards than usual in the halls. The council was getting nervous. Back in his room, Jack couldn't sleep. He reviewed the files again, feeling a mix of anger and determination. Earth wasn't just fighting for recognition anymore. They were fighting for the right to grow, to develop, to reach their full potential. His communication screen lit up with an incoming call. It was Will, the Gravity World fighter. "Jack, you need to know something. The other lower ring fighters, we're organizing. Your fight tomorrow. It's become a symbol for all the species they've kept down." "What do you mean?" "Look at your viewing statistics." Will's scaled face showed excitement. "Half the lower ring species are pooling their resources to watch. You're not just fighting for Earth anymore. You're fighting for every species they've claimed wasn't ready, wasn't worthy." Jack walked to his window, looking out at the arena that suddenly seemed more like a prison than a sporting venue. Tomorrow's fight would change everything, one way or another. The Council had spent centuries building their system of control, using the arena to maintain their power while keeping lesser species in their place. His hands clenched into fists. Time to show them why keeping humanity down had been their biggest mistake. The room's computer chimed. 12 hours until upper ring match. Human Jack Stone versus Battle Master Forge. All arena levels on maximum security alert. In the darkness of his room, Jack smiled. They weren't just going to see a fight tomorrow. They were going to see a revolution. The upper ring arena was packed beyond capacity. Beings from across the galaxy watched as Jack entered the massive fighting space. The air crackled with energy and tension. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a moment that would change galactic history. Forge stood in the opposite corner, his metal body gleaming under the bright lights. 9 feet tall, built like a tank, with arms that could reshape into any weapon. He'd never lost a fight. He'd never needed to try. "Last chance to withdraw, human." Forge's voice boomed across the arena. "You don't have to die today." Jack rolled his shoulders, loosening up. "Funny. I was about to say the same to you." The arena eye announced the match. As the starting tone sounded, Forge charged. His right arm transformed into a blade, his left into a shield. He moved faster than anything that size should be able to move. Jack didn't try to block or match strength. He dodged, ducked, and kept moving. Forge's blade whistled past his head, cutting a few strands of hair. The crowd gasped as Jack stayed just out of reach, making the legendary warrior miss again and again. "Stand and fight." Forge roared, his frustration growing. His arms merged into a massive hammer. He brought it down where Jack had been standing, cracking the arena floor. But Jack was already moving. 3 weeks of training with Rex and the others had taught him well. Never be where the enemy expects. He darted in, landed 2 quick punches on Forge's knee joint, then rolled away before the counterattack. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Forge had never had a fight last this long. His movements became less precise, his attacks more desperate. Jack kept moving, landing small hits when he could, always staying just out of reach. "This is beneath me," Forge growled, his metal body starting to show stress marks from constant reshaping. "You're not fighting. You're running." "Really?" Jack's voice was steady despite his burning muscles. "Because from where I'm standing, you're the one who's tired." High above in the control room, Drift phased through the walls into the broadcast center. His hands moved over the controls, uploading the files they'd discovered. Across the galaxy, viewers suddenly saw proof of the Council's manipulation, their centuries of keeping lesser species down. The crowd's mood shifted as the truth spread. Cheers for Forge turned to shouts of anger at the Council. The Metal Lord rose from his seat, pointing at the human. "This match is canceled. Guards, seize them." "No." Rex's voice boomed through the speaker system. "The match continues. By arena law, nothing can stop a upper ring fight once it begins. Isn't that what you always told us?" Forge charged again, but this time Jack stood his ground. The crowd went silent. Forge's blade arm swept down and passed right through Jack's body. "What?" Forge stumbled, off balance. "Gift from my friend Drift." Jack grinned, his body briefly transparent. "Turns out humans can use phase-shifting technology better than anyone." Something about our adaptable nervous systems. Jack became solid again, driving his fist into Forge's face. The metal warrior staggered back, more from surprise than pain. But now everyone could see the truth. The unbeatable champion was slowing down, while the human looked ready to go for hours. "You can't win," Forge said, but doubt had crept into his voice. "You're just one human." "That's where you're wrong." Jack pointed to the screen showing the exposed conspiracy. "I'm fighting for every species you tried to keep down, and we're done playing by your rules." The final exchange was almost too fast to follow. Forge, desperate to end the fight, poured all his remaining energy into one massive attack. His entire body became a weapon, sharp edges everywhere, impossible to dodge. Jack didn't try to dodge. He charged straight in, phase-shifting through the deadly attack. As he passed through Forge's body, he became solid again, right in the middle of the metal warrior's mass. The effect was catastrophic. Forge's perfect metal form shattered from the inside out, unable to maintain cohesion with a solid object embedded in it. The great champion fell to his knees, his body cracking apart. "How?" Forge whispered as his consciousness faded. "How did you beat me?" "Because that's what humans do," Jack said quietly. "We find a way. We always find a way." The arena-eye's voice echoed. "Winner by total incapacitation. Earth-human Jack Stone." The revolution had begun. The week after Jack's victory over Forge changed the galaxy forever. The arena's great halls, once filled with the quiet whispers of politics and power, now echoed with the shouts of revolution. But unlike most revolutions, this one didn't end in bloodshed. It ended in reform. Jack stood before the newly formed Galactic Council, different from the old one in every way that mattered. Rex sat in one of the chairs, representing his species. Will, the Gravity World fighter, occupied another. Even Light Prism had earned a seat. The old council members who had chosen to accept change remained, while those who refused had quietly disappeared into exile. "Earth will need representatives," the Metal Lord said, his voice humbled by recent events. "Your species has proven itself beyond any doubt." Jack shook his head. "I'm just a miner who got lucky. Earth has better people for this job. Scientists, diplomats, leaders. They should be here, making these decisions." "Then let's bring them here," Drith said, his transparent form glowing with excitement. "The isolation barriers around Earth are down. We can make first contact properly this time." The next few days were a blur of activity. Jack found himself on a ship heading back to Earth, accompanied by representatives from 20 different species. As they approached his home planet, he saw it through new eyes. A beautiful blue marble that had produced a species capable of shaking the foundations of galactic society. The landing was arranged carefully, in an open field outside the United Nations building in New York. World leaders gathered, militaries stood ready, and billions watched through their screens as humanity officially joined the galactic community. Jack stepped out first, wearing his arena fighter's uniform. "It's okay," he said into the microphone they'd given him. "They're here as friends, as equals." The fear and tension broke when Rex emerged next, his massive wolf-like form somehow less threatening as he awkwardly tried to wave at the crowd. The other aliens followed, each bringing gifts of knowledge and technology that would help Earth catch up on centuries of enforced isolation. "Your species has much to learn," Rex told the assembled leaders later that day. "But you also have much to teach. Your adaptability, your creativity, your endurance. These are things many of us had forgotten were important." The changes came quickly after that. Earth's best minds gained access to galactic technology, but they didn't just copy it. They improved it. Human scientists, working with alien counterparts, solved problems that had stumped the galaxy for millennia. Human artists introduced new forms of entertainment that swept through alien cultures. Human athletes joined the arena in growing numbers, each bringing their own style and determination. 1 month after first contact, Jack stood in the arena again, but this time as a teacher. A group of young fighters from various species gathered around him. eager to learn. The old council thought power came from being naturally stronger, faster, or tougher than everyone else, he told them. But that's not what makes a species great. It's the ability to learn, to change, to work together. That's what humans taught the galaxy. And what did the galaxy teach humans? Asked a young crystalline fighter, reminding Jack of his first match. Jack smiled. That we're not alone. That being different isn't a weakness. It's a strength. Every species has something to offer, something to teach. The trick is being willing to learn. Later that evening, Jack sat with Rex in the observation deck, watching ships from 100 worlds come and go freely through arena space, having second thoughts about retiring from fighting. Rex asked. No, Jack said, touching the scars from his battle with Forge. I did what I needed to do. Now it's time for others to have their chance. Rex nodded toward a group of human children playing with alien youngsters in the garden below. Look at them. No fear, no prejudice, just curiosity and friendship. You helped build this, Jack. Not bad for a mining accident. Jack laughed. Best accident of my life. He looked out at the stars, thinking about how far humanity had come and how far they still could go. You know what the best part is? This is just the beginning. In the decades that followed, the story of Jack Stone became legend, not just on Earth, but across the galaxy. Not because he was the strongest or the most skilled, but because he showed that sometimes the greatest victories come from simply refusing to accept limitations. The arena remained, but it changed. It became a place where species came together to learn from each other, to test themselves not against each other, but against their own limitations. And in every match, fighters remembered the lesson that humanity had taught the galaxy. Never let anyone tell you what you can't do.